That is resective. Okay. Now, osseous surgery, we can just bring about changes in the alveolar bone. If it is too bulbous or anything, we can reshape it. If we have to, do some recontouring, we can reshape that bone, or we can remove some part of the bone, right? So when we are removing tooth supporting alveolar bone, it is called osteectomy. When we are when we are reshaping the bone without compromising any tooth supporting bone. Okay, tooth supporting bone is what?
Osteoplasty.
No.
Alveolar bone.
Alveolar bone.
Yes. Okay, so uh, around the socket of the tooth, right? Tooth supporting bone, your interdental, right? So when any procedure involves your tooth supporting bone, then it becomes osteectomy. Otherwise, any reshaping of the alveolus otherwise is your osteoplasty. Okay. Then there are two types of osseous surgeries, additive or subtractive. Okay, additive, as the name suggests, what are we doing? We are trying to restore the bone to, we are trying to add bone, right? Subtractive means we are removing or we are reshaping the pre-existing bone also to a level where it can be maintained depending upon the indication, contraindication. Okay, so ideally we should always go for additive surgery, which is also regenerative surgery, right? But sometimes we cannot go for that because the situation is such where the bone graft will not hold, or where we cannot do regeneration. There, what we do is to bring about a positive or at least a flat architecture of the bone, we have to reshape a little. So we call it subtractive surgery. Okay. So something like this. So here, you see, here, do you think that what we have done here, if this is the pre, okay, supposedly, this is the pre-op, this is the post-op. So what have we done here?
Subtraction.
Yes, subtraction. Okay. So in subtraction also, there are two types of surgery. Okay, here what have we done? If this is the pre and this is the post.
Subtraction.
And subtractive.
Subtraction.
Yes, because then if we can't graft, at least we will give it a positive, a flat architecture. Okay. Here we have achieved some regeneration. So then this can become additive. Okay. Now in subtractive, again, there are two types, definitive and compromised. Okay. Now definitive means that this is when you do a subtractive surgery or when you do some reshaping, that means that this is a definitive form. Just give me one. Yeah. Okay, so definitive means that any further osseous reshaping is not going to help. Okay, this is all we can do, right? Now, compromised osseous reshaping means that this cannot be improved without a significant osseous removal. That would be detrimental to the overall result. One second. Okay, so is it understandable? Did you get it or no?
Please explain once.
Okay, you understood the difference between additive and subtractive, and to build bone, right? That is additive. Subtractive is when we are just reshaping what is otherwise when we are reshaping the bone to a lower level than it is already present, just to make it maintainable for the patient, right? So that is subtractive. And even in that, what happens is there is a definitive or a compromised reshaping. Okay, compromised means that how much ever we can reshape or subtract, okay, it will not give us our best result. Okay, so we do only that much that it can be maintained. Okay, definitive means that we know that any further osseous reshaping will not, we have done the best we can. Compromise means we are doing only till the level where we are maintaining it. We can go further, but that would not improve the result. Okay, so that is compromise osseous reshaping. From our side, we can do more, but that will only further damage the tooth and not, I mean, the bone, and not, give any progress to our result. Okay, I think you all are lost. Did anyone understand?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am.
got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. I have to say you got it. No? Okay. Now, what is the rationale of this osseous surgery? Okay. The rationale is that we have to bring about a physiological contour of the tooth. You know that there are three types of architecture: a positive architecture, a flat architecture, and a
Ma'am.
negative
Ma'am.
Negative.
architecture. Yeah.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
Is it fine now? My connection is okay.
Yes, ma'am, now fine.
It's fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse
Okay.
me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, in compromise osseous reshaping, if we do more contouring, then we are going to damage that thing. Or in definitive reshaping.
Your voice is breaking. I think the connection. Whose connection? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Can you ask your doubt again? Your voice was breaking.
Ma'am, in compromised osseous reshaping, you said that in that if we do more contouring, then we are going to damage or in definitive one.
In compromise, if we do further, we might end up damaging it more. So we leave it till a point where we know that it can just be maintained as it is. Okay, so that means we are doing compromised work from our end. We are not doing the best that we can. A definitive procedure we are not doing. We are just doing a compromised kind of work till, I mean, just to a point where the patient can maintain it. If we go further, we might damage. That's why we don't do it further. We don't subtract more and more and more.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so we will see the architectures now. Now, these are some of the healthy topographies of bone, right? You can appreciate. This is how your interdental bone should look like, right? What's a positive architecture? What do you mean by positive architecture? It is seen here, both the diagrams.
Radicular bone is less than the interdental bone.
And what is a negative architecture then?
Ma'am, interdental bone is
Higher.
Is higher.
and it's positive.
Yes. Okay. So our goal is to re-establish a positive or at least a flat architecture in periodontitis patient. Okay. So now here is your, you can read your positive and you can see the diagrams here. Okay. The interdental bone should be coronal, or the interproximal bone should be coronal. Okay. Than on the facial or lingual aspect. Flat architecture is when everything is at the same level. Negative architecture is when interproximal bone is low, at a lower level or a more apical level than the interradicular. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what are the indications? Why do we do osseous resection? Okay, if we have a crater, okay, crater is what? A shallow defect. right? A shallow concave defect interproximally. So then what does that become? A negative architecture, right? So we can just reshape the bone a little from here and make it a flat architecture or a positive architecture. So then what will happen? The gingiva will not get inside it. There'll be no pocket formation. Okay, if we just make this flat, okay, then the gingiva, when we put back, it will close over here, right? So your pocket will not be present anymore. Otherwise, if this is the case, there will always be a pocket, a gingival pocket, because the gingiva always follows the bone, right? So that's why we have, this is what I'm trying to explain to you, the indication for any osseous resection. Okay, then if we have something, then we have bony ledges, or we have exostosis, where I mean, there's bulbous bone. You can, or reverse architecture, you can just shape them into a flat or a positive architecture. If there is a shallow intrabony defect, less than 3 mm, less than or equal to 3 mm, there you don't need to put any graft. You can just file it to this level. Okay. Okay. Then if you want any pre-prosthetic, resective or cosmetic surgeries, that is when you want crown lengthenings, anterior smooth comes into picture, right? So when you need to do crown lengthening and still maintain your biological width, then you need to contour the bone also, not just cut the gingiva. Okay, so there you have to do osseous resection. Okay, so what should be the endpoint of your osseous resector surgery? You see this image here. So here, there are ledges. This is bulbous bone. The architecture is not positive. Okay, so here they have reshaped it, right? They have adapted the bone to the surface, and although there is a crater here, I get it, but they have tried to bring about some positive architecture. Okay, so this is the end point is that when the gingiva is placed back, then there should be minimal probing depth, and there should be a restoration of the gingival tissues to such a level where the patient can maintain it. There are no pockets where the food is getting lodged and further periodontal degradation is happening. Okay, so this is the goal. Contraindication is where you have aesthetic issues. There if you give there if you do osseous recontouring, the gingiva will follow. Okay, so high aesthetic demanding cases you can't do, I mean, you have to plan your cases. Then where there is a shallow probing depth, there you don't need to do anything to the bone. Okay, other than just filing it. Okay, then shallow probing depth, you should not do surgery only actually. Okay, or where there is a very if you see this x-ray, okay, there is a very deep defect. Here you can't justify subtractive surgery or anything. Okay, here you have to add, you have to do regeneration. Here you don't have to do resection of anything. Okay, so here you can add in the graft, right? Or there is a fracture, or if there are local anatomic factors present like the sinus floor, or if a patient has a high caries index, or there are uncontrolled systemic factors which makes it, I mean, which makes it a contraindication for any surgery per se, uncontrolled diabetes, HIV. Okay, all of this. So these are the contraindications. So clinically, the questions that are asked in clinical level, what are the, I mean, all of the following are contraindications of osseous resector surgery, except, okay, these are the questions that you get, right? These kind of questions, I'm sure you have seen. So the options there are high aesthetic cases. It is it's a contraindication. Okay, 5 mm probing depth, 7 probing depth, and sir, all of them are contraindicated except What is the answer?
Voice
Ma'am, your
went.
voice is
repeat.
repeat the question.
Am I clear now? Can you hear me
Yes,
completely?
yes, yes.
Okay. All of the following are contraindications for osseous resective surgery, except maxillary anterior teeth, mandibular posterior teeth with 5 mm probing depth, then a patient with uncontrolled diabetes, vertical fractures.
Ma'am, B.
Okay, so such questions will come to you. So that's why we are studying the indication and contraindication. Where is it? Where all is it indicated? Where you have to recontour the bone to get a positive or a good architecture. Where you there is bulbous bone, there are ledges. Where you have shallow intrabony defects. Okay, not shallow probing depth. Shallow probing depth is a contraindication. Shallow intrabony defect is an indication. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Clear? Okay. Then you can, okay, so in shallow vertical defects, you can do reverse architecture, furcation involvement. Where you have grade 2 furcation defects, you can do a procedure called tunneling, grade 2 and 3. So what happens that there'll be one deficiency in the furcation area. Okay. So supposedly, the bone is like this. Okay, so what you can do for furcation, either you can graft this with something or you can do tunneling. Okay, tunneling means through and through, you can just file the bone and give it a nice smooth architecture like this. So then when you place the gingiva back, the gingiva will sit on this, okay, like in this fashion. And then the patient can maintain the furcation and other areas. So once there's no pocket, the patient can maintain the furcation and the tooth. Okay, this is a very commonly done procedure for furcation involvements. It's called tunneling. It's done for grade 2 and sometimes grade 3 furcation involvements. Okay, then we have bulbous bony contours, osseous craters. I told you all of this. You can do resective surgery. Okay, this is just for your revision. You know what is a crater, what is a trench, what is a ramp. Okay, this kind of a thing, this kind of bone defect. Ramp, trench means from above, it will only seem like a small defect, but it is deep when you go, along the root. So trench means there's no bone over here also. Okay, it's like a surang. A trench is what army bases, they used to make trenches, right, to seat their soldiers. So that way. Okay, from outside it's appearing only this much, but inside also along the root it's all hollow.
Ma'am, trench is only on one root, not both sides.
No,
Ma'am,
no,
like in
it can
cradle,
be on
it's on
both.
both sides.
It can be on both. Okay, crater is a buccolingual defect like this, concave buccolingual defect. Okay, so then this makes the architecture of the bone negative. So that's why you have to, you can just do osteoplasty and you can just, maintain the architecture of the bone. So bone loss can be horizontal, vertical, or something like craters, right? Then you have your 3-wall
What
defect.
is RAM?
Ramp is this. See, ramp, as the name is suggesting, ramp is what? Something slanting, right?
Yeah.
So a ramp is a bone loss like this, which starts, which is at a different level in the same tooth. Okay, in the same tooth, the bone loss pattern is at different levels. This is a ramp like this.
Mostly it is on distal last of the tooth or posterior tooth.
Yeah, mostly because of the morphology of the tooth or the alignment of the tooth. It's not necessary that it will usually be only on the distal tooth, but yeah, commonly we see that because of the placement or the alignment of the tooth that way, that happens. Okay, the ramp can be anywhere otherwise, but most commonly it will be there on the distal most. And this is very commonly, this kind of bone loss is also common when there is a trauma from occlusion also sometimes. Okay, because if there is a plunger cusp over here, okay, then there'll be definite food lodgement, and if there is a interdental space here, then you will see something like this, a ramp, when you open the gingiva. Okay. Okay, now you all know 3-wall defect means what?
3 walls remaining.
3 walls are present. 2-wall defect, 2 walls are present. Right? 1-wall defect, also known as
Hemiseptal defect.
Defect.
very good. Combined defect. All walls. What is a moat?
All 4 sides are involved.
All sides, yes. Okay. Then you can have bulbous bony contours. Then you can have reverse. So this, see, you can see how clearly we see a reverse architecture here, right? Then these are some ledges. How are ledges formed most commonly?
Ma'am, this is trench.
Where?
First picture, ma'am. Is it trench?
This can be. This might be a trench. We have to see beneath it. Yeah, this can be a trench. If it is only till here, how it is shown, then this is not a trench. This is a crater. Okay. If it is like this, which what is seen in this picture, see, right? This is not a trench till here. If it is then yes, this becomes a trench. Looks like a trench.
Ma'am, reverse architecture has a positive architecture.
No.
In this picture from Carranza book, or it is negative.
To reverse is negative. Reverse architecture means negative architecture. What is positive architecture? Positive architecture is
Interdental
this.
coronal.
Right. So this becomes a reverse architecture or a negative architecture. Negative and reverse are the same thing. Okay. Where do we see ledges most commonly? Anyone? Anyone? Ledges?
Molars.
No. Which condition? Which condition? In which condition do we see ledges? Okay, I'll give you another hint.
Trauma
lip-
from occlusion.
Yes, very good, very good. Lipping, right? You remember buttressing bone, lipping, peripheral, central.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, all of that is seen in trauma from occlusion. Okay. Now, how do we plan for these resective osseous surgery? Because now, nowadays, yeah, trench moat and all, you can get questions, but I think more questions are clinical oriented. When do you do this surgery? What is the indication? All are the contraindications except, right? All of these things. So what all do you see? You see the probing depth, you see the location of the pocket, you see the number of bony walls present. Okay, and you see the presence of furcation defects or absence of furcation defects. Okay, but the key to treatment planning is first and foremost periodontal probing. Okay, why? Because it tells you a lot of information, whether the periodontium is diseased, whether there is true attachment loss or not, whether what is the condition, whether it is a pseudo pocket, true pocket. You have to see all of these things, whether furcation is present, right? So that is how you do the planning. Okay, then you do something which is known as transgingival probing or bone sounding. Okay, what is bone sounding? Can you see in these images? First, you insert the bone, you insert the probe and you check your probing depth. Secondly, what you do, firstly anesthetize. Okay, after that, wherever you have located the probing, the resistance to be, okay, here supposedly. So here now from outside, you will put your probe to see where is the level of the bone. Okay. So this is known as bone sounding or transgingival probing, transgingival through the gingiva. Okay, what does this tell us? The level of bone, the level of attachment. Okay, then you can take radiographs, of course. You have to take radiographs to see whether it is what kind of a defect. Is it a hemiseptum? It is a horizontal, vertical, crater? What is it? Right? Then what you do is the best kind of the definitive diagnosis only comes with exploration. So you open the flap and that is where you actually see what is the defect for real. Because anyway, even radiograph is a 2D image at the end of the day, right? So if it is a case of a defect, the best, and if a question comes, what is the best method? Because this, I have seen this question, although I think it comes now. What is the best method to do is through surgical answer. And if the question says non-invasive, then you have to mark any 3D analysis if it is given, CBCT or
Ma'am, you can repeat.
I was saying that if a question comes that what is the best method to detect the type of bone defect present, then if the answer has exploratory surgery in it or flap surgery, you have to mark that. Okay. If the question says non-invasive method and you have any 3D analysis given, a CT or a CBCT, then you have to mark that as the answer. Okay. More than a IOPA or a radiograph. Okay, which is better for an isolated tooth defect, OPG or IOPA?
IOP.
IOPA.
Okay, more than an IOPA, you would take a CBCT. Okay. Okay, so then you open the flap, you can see vertical incisions are given for proper access, right? I'm not going into the details of flap surgery right now. Okay. Then incision design is based on your probing depth, right? Or the procedure that you want to do. If you want to do crown lengthening with osseous recontouring, you have to cut the gingiva and open the flap, right? If it's an aesthetic case and you only want to contour the non-tooth supporting bone, right? Then you can spare the gingival collar and you can just cut that much and release the flap. Okay, so it depends. So the placement of the incision also depends upon the placement of the gingival margin, the probing depth, where you've done your, if there is recession, right? So there only you can put your incision, from there only you open. If you have equigingival margin, I mean where CEJ and gingival margin are matching, then you can give an intrasulcular incision. Okay. Or if it is more, if it is bulbous, then you give an incision through the gingiva. Okay, you cut into the gingiva. Otherwise, you can give through the sulcus. Okay, so this I already told you. How do you manage? How do you do the osseous recontouring or resection? You can use bone rongers. You can use your diamond burrs. You can use your carbide burrs. You can use your chisels and your files. Okay, now you all know the 4 steps in osseous resection. Vertical grooving, as the name suggests. Okay, you can just keep seeing the pictures and we're through with this. Okay, there's vertical grooving, radicular blending. Okay, vertical grooving means you make depth cuts, like how you do for your crown preparation, right? So here also you make depth cuts. we have to go up till this depth here, up till this depth here. Then you blend it. Okay, you do radicular blending, right? After that, you flatten the interproximal bone. Then you gradualize the marginal. Okay, so now the first two steps, vertical grooving and radicular blending, you are not touching the tooth supporting bone right now. The interproximal bone and the marginal bone will come in the next two parts, right? So the first two steps are osteoplasty. The next two steps where you are touching the tooth supporting bone is osteectomy. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So vertical grooving, radicular blending, flattening of interproximal bone, then gradualizing the marginal bone. Okay, so this is how you do vertical grooving. You make depth cuts, right? And there is one contraindication of vertical grooving where the root proximities, the alveolar housing is very thin and the roots are too much in approximation. If the tooth is tilted or malpositioned in some way, right, then don't do vertical grooving. Otherwise, you might create a cut in the root surface. Okay, so you have to see. That's why you need to see the bone to do it. Okay, so then we have your radicular blending, where you just gradualize the non-tooth supporting bone according to your vertical grooves. Okay, then flattening of interproximal bone. I think it's pretty clear with the name itself. And then you gradualize the marginal bone with your chisels or files. Okay. So this is one of the pictures cases that you can see. Okay, so they've opened the bone. You can see the kind of bone. It's a flat ledge kind of architecture. Okay. So now they recontour it. They have adapted the bone to the roots nicely and they put it back suture. Okay, so this is what? Subtractive or additive?
Subtractive.
Very good. Okay, now just some treatment planning quickly. Now, if you have a hemiseptal defect or a one-wall defect, okay, then now this is the defect which doesn't have very good prognosis, right? So you have to assess. Okay, so first of all, now these are taken from your Carranza only. Okay, no, this is not from your Carranza. Sorry. Okay, so now when you have to do the treatment planning, you assess the risk. If there is a risk to the adjacent teeth, okay, then and the tooth can act as a good abutment tooth, then you can extract. If the adjoining tooth is a poor abutment tooth, you can attempt regeneration. Regeneration means bone grafting with membrane. Okay, you can do guided tissue regeneration. Okay, if there is no risk to the adjacent tooth, then you can just extract this tooth and or maintain. Okay, now if the affected tooth is essential, okay, like a first molar or a canine, something like that, okay, then, or if it has to act as an abutment tooth and there is no other option, okay, then you determine the depth of the defect. If the defect is shallow to moderate, that is around 5 mm, less than or equal to 5 mm, you can do osseous resection. If it is more than 5 mm, then you can't do osseous resection, you have to do grafting or GTR. Okay, so in hemiseptal defects, you have to see whether in 3-wall defect and 2-wall defect, your prognosis is good and fair. Okay, so there you can do regeneration resection, that's fine. But in 1-wall defect, you really have to see whether you need to retain this tooth or not. So if you need to retain this tooth, then you can see the depth of the defect. If the defect is shallow, then you can do osseous resection. If the defect is deep, you can do guided tissue regeneration. Okay, crater therapy, I told you already. We can do if the crater is shallow, right? Then we can very well do osseous resection and we can maintain it. If there is a deep defect, then if we can, you think it is a contained defect, we can do a bone grafting. If it is not a contained defect and there is Caucasian involvement and all of that, you can extract. Okay. If it is a deep defect. Otherwise, generally craters, if they are not too deep, then you can do the resection, osseous resection, and just maintain them. Okay, ledge correction, I told you, you just need to file the bone. Okay, give a nice positive architecture as much as possible and close. Okay, root resection. Any doubts in hemisection, root resection? No, right? They are pretty clear topics in themselves, right? What do we do if there is a deep defect, something like this, right? And we do the root canal of the tooth, right? And we can just, if the bone is present till furcation, and we think that we can save the tooth by grafting this area, and it's an essential tooth. So what we do the root resection, we graft this area, we leave it to heal, bone forms, and we put a crown over it. Okay. Similarly, hemisection, what we do, we can, so there are two types of hemisections, bicuspidization or hemisection. Okay, in bicuspidization, what we do, we make two premolars out of one molar if bone is there, right? And if there's a, because nowadays we are doing this for vertical fractures also, right? We divide them after root canal, we splint them, and we retain them till bone grows around each of the tooth, right? So then they can act as two premolars. Otherwise, if there is bone loss or something around one tooth, I mean one root, we can remove the whole thing, put a crown like a premolar and use it. Okay. Okay, now how do you do osseous resection in edentulous areas? We do something known as a bone swaging. Okay, bone swaging is nothing but, you can just see the picture here. Okay, we just wedge one piece of bone. So there's a defect here. Okay, after we've opened, there's a defect here. So now we want to put bone. What we do, we'll put a cut here. We'll wedge this part. Once this detaches, we'll just push it here. Okay, now we push this here. And now we close the flap back. Okay, so this is known as bone swaging. Okay, now coming to crown lengthening. Here we have the concept of biological width. What is, how much is the
2.04 mm.
2.9.
biological width? It's written here. Why do we need it? For all of these reasons. Okay. So biological width is basically 0.97 of mm of epithelial attachment and 1.07 mm of connective tissue attachment, right? So now if you basically imagine a scenario where you need length in the crown, and now what you have done, nicely you came, you needed 3 mm, you've cut this much. Okay, you've cut this much, you've put a crown here. Now the patient has only this much till the crest of the bone. Okay. Otherwise, the patient had 2.04 mm. Now he has only 0.5 or 1 mm left. Now what will happen?
Recession.
Before recession, what will happen?
Bone loss, attachment loss.
Yes, because we need, how much is the distance of alveolar crest from the CEJ? Ideally,
2 mm.
right. So how much do we need? At least
At
1.5
least
to
2
2 mm, right? So if we don't respect this distance, then you are in for bone loss, recession, periodontal disease. Nice crown will be there and the tooth will become mobile in 3 years or 4 years time. Okay, so that is why we need to respect biological width. So how do we do that? We do whenever we need crown lengthening or we need to cut the gingiva for whatever reason, it's a drug induced enlargement case, whatever it is, Okay, if we need to cut the gingiva, we need to take 2.04 mm into consideration, and we need to do the transgingival probing. Or, with the radiograph, we see if your bone level is normal, up to a normal level, if there is no bone loss, then, and you have to cut 2 mm of tissue, and you have 2.04 only, then what will you need to do? You will need to reduce the bone to again maintain this width. Okay, so you have to open the flap. You can't just cut the tissue and leave it. You have to open the flap, you have to reduce the bone, and then you put the flap back. That is when your gingivectomy will become stable without further damage to that tooth. Otherwise, you are in for nice bone loss, recession, everything, pocket formation, food lodgement, further pocket formation, okay, mobility, everything. Understood the concept?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and once pocket starts developing, then what happens? Food lodgement, patient cannot maintain it, subgingival caries, okay, all of this, all of secondary problems will start, right? So this is the concept behind biologic width. 2.04 mm has to be maintained. Whether you are cutting gingiva, whether you need for crown, whether you need for gingivectomy, anything, okay? So you need to always keep on measuring the bone level as well. It should be at least, your alveolar crest should be at least 2.5 mm from your restorative margin. Okay. So what can be the causes of failure? Poor post-operative plaque control. You have not given a good architecture. You were unable to eliminate pocket completely. Okay, the sutures were not proper. There was infection after the bone. The flap got necrosed. Okay, all these could be the complications. Okay, any questions? Are you guys there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
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 Okay. Any questions? No?
No.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move to regenerative.